The developers coping over Highguard's failure has crossed over into ridiculous territory. They are blaming gamers for its failure, they are blaming the leadership for its failure, and now they're saying that they might have leaned too far into the competitive scene, even though they are not taking accountability for their own actions. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, it's very clear to see that Highguard failed because it was a game nobody asked for in an oversaturated genre. We constantly are seeing titles like this churned out, and almost none of them are successful. And when you are releasing something that is supposed to be the next big game on the block, it's like these games fail because they wanted them to succeed so badly. And then games where maybe the developers just thought, hey, we were going to put it out, some people were going to like it, or they put a very small amount of money towards the game's budget, but it was created out of passion. Those games tend to do extremely well. And Highguard faced massive problems since it had been unveiled. The fact that it was the last announcement at the Game Awards was a bad move. The fact that they went silent on social media for a month was not positive. And then you had people like Jeff Keighley shilling for it. And then it came out and it was just a bad game. Yeah, you deserve to have your experience fail. And now, instead of just taking accountability and saying, we didn't create a game that everybody loved, we tried, we failed, now they're saying that the game may have failed because it leaned too far into the competitive scene. So Highguard, the free-to-play PvP raid shooter, announced at the Game Awards last year and released only for most of its developers to be laid off just weeks after launch, may have failed because it leaned too far into the competitive scene, which is a wild claim because it's just not true. The gunplay was bad, the mechanics were bad, the maps were bad, the fact that you had 3v3 initially was bad. Like, when you are creating a game with a competitive scene in mind, generally you are trying to hone in on something like the gunplay or the abilities and the mechanics. Like, you are trying to make it as perfect as possible, but it's like they didn't do that here. They did the least amount of work possible. They put in the least amount of effort possible and they still expected it to succeed, and it didn't. You do not just deserve our money simply because you made something. Like, congratulations, I'm glad you felt confident in it, but you're not making a game for yourselves, you're making a game for an audience, and you guys were given a hell of an opportunity. Maybe you could view the 97,000 all-time peak as good marketing because they had gone silent, and so a lot more people were a lot more curious about this game, so they downloaded it. But you lost 99% of your player base because the game sucks. 97K was only reached because you were paying people to stream your game, and it just wasn't good, and so you lost everybody. It's not, ooh, because you leaned too far into competitive, or ooh, the toxic gamers killed it. It just wasn't a good game. So that is according to a former Wildlight developer and level designer, Alex Grainer, who told Quad Damage Podcast that developers don't strive to create something that doesn't work out throughout development. Wildlight really leaned into the competitive side of it, and that was always one of my biggest fears as a player. I can only speak to my side of it as a level designer. Yeah, by the way, the level design fucking sucked in this game, so you're also part of the problem. No need to sit here and play the victim. But when he joined Wildlight, it was trying to figure out this new ambitious game, and this team was always pushing the boundaries. You don't have to strive to create something that doesn't work out, but it happens unfortunately. Throughout development, we really leaned into the competitive side of it, and that was always one of my biggest fears as a player. 3v3 duos is always the sweatiest version of anything like Battle Royale, objectives, wingman, you know it, you name it. It requires such a high intensity of communication with your team and team play, and it doesn't leave much room for casualness. I think that was the biggest thing that turned a lot of players off Highguard. Yeah, but The problem with that argument is that a week later, they added 5v5. So then, technically, people should have been playing it and loved it even more and thought to themselves, wow, this is truly what makes this game special. But that didn't happen. It's like, oh, you want to loot. Now you've got to chase this objective. Now we have to plant the objective. Now it's overtime. It had all these rules, which I think works at a really high level. But when players are first coming in, it's a lot to grasp. What's so crazy is that it technically is a lot to grasp, but you do grasp it very quickly. The problem is that these systems are just bad. Like, you have every single element under the sun in this experience, and it's still a boring game. It's insane that that happened. On top of it all, because it was 3v3, that kind of game just requires high skill movement and shooting, which is already a pretty high bar of entry as well. So you just have a few bad games, or your teammates aren't syncing together, you're just going to get rolled, and it's very hard to 1v2 in our game. So yeah, it's just Cope City over here, blaming everybody but themselves, which is so infuriating to see, because at least if they came out and they were like, yeah, we created a game that just didn't resonate with people, it was on us, I would go, oh my gosh, a little bit of accountability, a little bit of responsibility for your actions. This is actually a good statement, but that hasn't happened. Oh, it's the investors' fault for dropping their investments and not giving them more money. Oh, it's the gamers' fault for not giving this a chance, for criticizing it, for, I guess, just not playing it. Oh, suddenly it's everybody else's fault except for theirs. If you created a better game, people would have played your game. Look in the mirror, guys. It's your fault. These crappy games will never stop being made until devs learn about what gamers actually want. It's not more live service junk. Live service games can be successful. Live service isn't even the biggest problem here. If your game is fun, it has a good aesthetic, it has a lot going for it, live service can work out well. Look at Arc Raiders. It didn't make a game to be a sport. It didn't make a game to have a prize pool of $1 million for no reason. It made a game for fun, for a decent sized group to enjoy. All the ex-Highguard players say the game failed because it never engaged with gamers to see if anybody wanted it. It failed because it was coded to the minority of gamers, marketing 101. Highguard failed because they never bothered doing open beta testing to actually get real player feedback. Yeah, and Josh Sobel had even admitted in his X post that he deleted because he removed his entire account from the platform, that there was a lot of toxic positivity, that, oh, everybody who played the game said it was like lightning in a bottle and it was going to be so great and amazing. Maybe you should actually bring real gamers into the space. I know you guys like to live in your echo chamber, but maybe if you actually engaged with people who you generally don't like or generally are critical of products, would be able to play it and then tell you their honest opinion. And sure, you don't need to add every element that they suggest, but you could have at least gotten some genuine and honest feedback instead of having people who are patting you on the back saying, good job, guys, who didn't actually show up to play your game. And now that Tencent has ripped their funding away and the player counts have dwindled and most of these developers have been laid off, I don't think we're going to hear much more about Highguard except for a little bit more coping, perhaps, and then the inevitable shutdown of the servers that's gotta be happening soon. Yeah, now developers are saying it failed because it leaned too far into the competitive scene, and they completely are ignoring the truth behind the matter that their game was just bad. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this important and informative, make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.